since we've got on to sort of geopolitics and the world economy, Tom, I noticed that the Biden administration recently announced a new U.S.-China framework to manage the risks associated with that bilateral relationship in the age of very aggressive actions by China on the world stage. I don't know if you've heard about that, but maybe just your thoughts on the U.S.-China relationship right now.
Well, I think we have to flip back to Richard Nixon, who was probably the best president America had in modern times, despite, whatever. He understood the nature of splitting China and Russia. And right now they're getting together with Russia being the weak partner to that. So at some point in time, they have to either allow Mr. Putin to get out of this Ukrainian mess with some face and bring him back into the Western fold, or do some kind of deal with China. And I think this whole rhetoric of driving boats through the Taiwan Straits and threatening to bomb everybody's got to back off, take a Valium and relax for a tiny bit, because rhetoric is just, we're going nowhere with it. And I think if everybody calms down and just moves it to the third page of the papers, that situation will slowly be allowed to diffuse. So I suspect cooler minds are prevailing in Washington, saying, we have to sit down and talk with it. Ariel Sharon, the famous Israeli general, had a wonderful line: "Sooner or later, you got to talk to your enemies." And it's far better to talk before you start bashing away at each other and causing great pain and suffering. So I think it's that kind of move.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying, and it always reminds me of Churchill's line, similar to Sharon's, which is that it's always better to jaw than to war. So
absolutely, same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. So they know what they're talking about.
It's interesting too. Yeah. I used to sit in a defense think tank in Ottawa, and it's really quite interesting that a lot of the senior military folks from all over the world, they all talk to each other. They all know each other, and even play head games with one another. But they try to keep communication open so nobody makes a mistake.
Right.
And that's the key thing, to pick up the phone and say, "Harry, what's going on?" That's really important for world safety. So we have to open that dialogue more with China, and less posturing and less bellicose verbiage.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying there too, for sure. And even obviously in Russia and Eastern Europe, when you're dealing with nuclear armed states, you don't want a miscalculation there, for sure.
Absolutely.
I get that. Let's talk about U.S. bank failures. They seem to be piling up a little bit. Is there a cause for concern here?
There's no cause for concern until there's cause for concern. At the present time, you had Silicon Valley and Fidelity and a couple of these other, these banks. It was very hard for them to readjust their liabilities and their investments with rates going up so fast. They were invested in long bonds, for example, Silicon Valley. And so when interest rates go up, those long bonds lose value if you have to sell them right away. And I think there was a contrived run on that bank, believe it or not. I think a lot of the local boys said, "Hey, there's going to be a problem here. Get your money out." And a lot of short sellers. America plays hardball in markets. It's a lot different than up here. So be that as it may, the Silicon Valley and the other regional banks, it really was like the canary in the coal mine, in that it tells the Federal Reserve, we're starting to cause some real pain here. It's not going to flash through and break the system, but we should be thinking quite seriously of the pace of these interest rate increases and the magnitude of them. So the good news is, I think it means the end of the aggressive rate increases. They might have one or two more, but I think this is pretty well it, because they do not want this expanding. The side effect to that, I own a lot of the major U.S. banks, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Citicorp. Those are the ones that benefit from it. And there's an interesting corollary for Canada here, Tony, you're going to kick out. You notice the Canadian Depository for Insurance has a $100,000 guarantee. America, by the way, it's $250,000 US. Mm-hmm. And in Canada, it should be increased because it's been the same for 25 years. And the reason it's not the same is it benefits the major Canadian banks. Mm-hmm. People might put $100,000 in a smaller bank, but the big money they'll go to one of the major banks because they figure they're not going to fail. So
Indeed.
it is a competitive edge, and the Canadian Depository, they should increase that to $250,000 or something,
Sure.
just to catch up. So, but it's an interesting corollary with what's
No,
happening.
exactly. No, I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to take another break. We'll be back with our guest, Tom Caldwell. Please stay with us.